Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome to Not Your Average Tabletop. I'm Zach.
And I'm Pepper.
And today we're giving our first impressions of Ankh, Gods of Egypt, which is one that's been sitting on our shelf of shame for, it was probably about a year.
Yeah.
I think we got it for Nerds Day 2022.
So. Yeah.
So it took us about a year because I think Nerds Day 2023 had happened.
Yeah, and I think we might have even played games from that before we got to this.
Yes, so this one had been sitting on there for quite a while. I think we had heard that this one was the trilogy of Eric Lang Simon games of Blood Rage, Rising Sun, Ankh. This one was the best playing at 2 players out of the 3.
Yeah.
And that's our typical player count is usually 2, sometimes 3. And it seems like the other ones might not play as well at those lower player counts.
Yep.
But yeah, so I've been actually pretty excited to play this one. I would say the Egyptian theme, is probably the one I'm least interested in out of the 3 of those games. But I've still been excited to try this one just because, I don't know, in my head I was just a little bit hyped on it. So I've just been waiting for it.
Yeah, I think I was about the same. Obviously, love 2-player games that are really good. This looked like it had some kind of area control type of thing, but not in a super negative way.
Right.
Like some are super thinky, and initially, just based on cover and name, this was least interesting to me.
Yeah.
I actually do like the cover quite a bit now that I have seen it more, but I was definitely like, I wish the other ones were better at 2 players, because I've just obviously heard a lot more about Blood Rage and Rising Sun, and I'd be like, I wish it was one of those, but then I was like, okay, people really, really love this at 2 players, so it did get to a pretty high excitement level for me as well, which is crazy that we didn't actually get around to it. It is still a big game, so it is hard to table, a hard one. Yeah, definitely intimidating.
But yeah, I would say that intimidation wore off kind of once you learned the game, looked at the rules and stuff, because it's a pretty simple action selection game, but it's just got some nice thinky moments, sort of crunchy. I don't know that they're really that crunchy, but thinky moments for sure, trying to outthink your opponent in certain ways, and...
Yeah, there's just like 4 core actions in the game.
Right.
To kind of have them on the...
Yeah, you can either move your figures around, so there's kind of a map that, like you said, there's sort of an area control aspect to it, where there's kind of different buildings that you're doing.
Yep.
I was going to say different monuments, but I think that one is actually called the monument.
Oh, yeah.
But I think there's like 3
pyramids, temples, and obelisks.
Okay, so maybe they are called monuments.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's those 3 different ones, and in each kind of zone, you're trying to control the most of each type.
So yeah, you have various setups based on whatever scenarios you want to play. And the one we played was the one it recommended for 2 players to start with, and it's got 2 large zones that are split by water, by rivers, and then throughout the game you will split those into additional zones, and each one is going to score kind of every so often once you trigger it through taking actions, which that's a really cool part of the game is they have just 4 core actions, and whenever you take one you move a token along that action's track kind of on that board there, and when it gets to the end of that track it triggers a movement along another track, which sometimes lets whoever caused that maybe gain control of one of those monuments. Sometimes it lets them place camels out onto the board and split those regions. But then, most importantly, the combat where you will then go through each of those regions in order and score. And you score points for just like 1 point apiece for like each type of those 3 monuments. Whoever has the most in that area will get a point. So whoever has the most pyramids here gets a point. The most temples, most obelisks, each one is going to be worth a point, and that will be for each of the areas. So splitting it can be really interesting if there are multiple in an area and you want to split that in order to get points for yourself instead of sharing them, and then you also score for just whoever has the most control in there with their figures, with their hero and with their, I don't know, sidekicks. That's the word that comes to mind, but it's totally not sidekicks. But yeah, so just
Figures.
figures.
Because you
yeah.
summon figures,
Yeah.
and you can gain followers and unlock Ankh powers, or the other three
Yes.
along with the move. But yeah, so, yeah, like you said, that's where most of the game happens, at
Yeah.
least the points of the game,
Yeah.
which it's kind of just a race to a certain amount of points.
Yep.
And yeah, those are the main ways for that to happen. I think that
Yeah.
might be. Is that the only way?
I
gain points?
believe that's
I don't remember.
otherwise. Yeah, I think it all happens there.
I think it all happens
mostly.
there as well.
Possibly.
Well, some cards that you
Yeah,
play, but
but
those
that's
also
still
happen
in
during
the combat. Yeah.
So yeah, during the combat, they can happen in different ways that you score points, but I believe that's where all the
Yep.
points are scored.
Yeah,
Um,
and maybe some of the upgrades, the Ankh powers that you can get,
Oh,
those might be
yeah.
awarded to, and possibly some of the you can get additional figures that you can get by unlocking your Ankh powers. If you, I think, unlock your second one, if you're the
Yep.
first to unlock the second one, you get the tier 1. I want to say monster, but they're not. They're kind of monsters. You get that one, and in a 2-player game, there's only one of each.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, that's not going to be good. Just one person, because you already have the advantage of already getting to the first Ankh,
Right.
unlocking of that, and then you'll be closer to get the second one, and then you could probably get the third as well. And I got 2 of them, and you got 1 of them, and while they were awesome, and I thought they added great powers, I don't think that is a concern anymore. I don't think that like completely swayed one thing
Right.
one way or the other. Like early on in the game, I didn't feel like I had a huge advantage just because I had one of those and you didn't. I
Right.
thought that was probably the perfect level of power for those.
Yeah, I agree. At the end, the Scorpion, I think, did.
Oh, the Scorpion
you
was
quite a
the
bit.
Scorpion was pretty bad, pretty
that
nasty
one
to
was
me.
pretty nasty.
Yeah,
But that was kind of the last one,
yeah,
and it just mainly mattered in the last 2 fights.
yeah. I think that
But
one.
it was
that
still
one-
pretty major.
Yeah,
But,
it was. It was probably the game decider.
It was
I think.
because in our one play, it was a very close game.
It was very close. It was,
it just based on decisions, it could have swung either way.
yeah.
So that's where a lot of the meat it was in the combats, and you're just playing an action card
Yep.
in each zone that you have something in.
Yep.
Assuming your opponent does as well. Otherwise, it would just score immediately if you didn't have anyone
Yep.
there. But then those cards do slightly different things, so just depending on what you play, they
Yeah.
can sometimes get you points for certain things.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're trying to lose combats,
Yeah,
but
and then
you're
for each, because once you lose, all your figures go away, or at least other than your hero, your main one.
Yeah.
So maybe you play a card that gets you 1 for every figure you lose, 1 point, and that could be 3 points or 2 points or
Right.
something, and that could just be massive, and you end up winning pretty much that
Right.
area, gaining more points than the opponent, and
Mhm.
sometimes you gain gain followers, I think, for being next to the rivers.
Oh,
And also those can't die if they're on the fertile grounds. And
Right.
then you can gain points if you win and you're in more of the desert area. Each one of
Hmm.
those will be a point. Looking at some of them just add strength
Right.
to it. So if you're like, I just need power,
To try to
throw
win
it
it.
out there. And it's really cool that they are symmetrical
Oh.
between the players, so you know what they
What people
played,
have.
you know what they still have in their hand, and then until you do end up pulling them back into your hand. And the big one here, you can also build monuments, I think, in this one, but the
Mhm.
big one here is the plague, which those follower tokens
Played into our game pretty heavily.
the follower tokens are not just used to unlock Ankh powers. You can get a lot of them. It's like, what are you going to do this? Oh, that plague thing, that probably won't come into play, but it is a huge factor. So
Yes.
you play that card, you deal with the plague, you bid an amount of followers, and if you bid the most, the other player loses all their people from that area.
So they don't get to score anything. They
No,
don't have any
get
chance.
to score their monuments, even if they did have those majorities. I believe not. I believe it said they do not, and I'm just like, just to eliminate them before they can score anything, which that definitely came into play after you kind of
Yep.
pushed me back against the wall with that Scorpion, and I'm like, oh, he's got a lot of powerful areas. I'm not getting much. I really need to stop him
Mhm.
from doing it, and so I ended up playing the Plague 2 times.
Yep.
I had to play it and pull it back into my hand the next time, and then play it.
Yep.
Somehow I still won the one that I had to pull back from because I had built up pretty well there.
Right, and your special ability allowed you to
play 2 cards.
That's
right, I played 2 there.
during a combat round.
Yeah.
So you didn't get to do it every time, but
during
you
one
had
of
to choose one
areas.
time to do that. And yeah, you were able. I think that's how you ended up still winning that one, was because you played the card to bring everything back while also playing like a 3 strength or something, something like that. So yeah, those asymmetrical powers can come into play as well.
Yeah,
being able to do those ones. But that ended up leading to it being very close. Because if you wouldn't have been able to pick that up, then I don't know. If, it would have still been close, but
you had the monument powers in 2 of those, so you were going to get like 3 points if I did not do that. I had to spread out and get people into those locations, so you didn't just
be able to compete.
Yeah. So I did spread myself a little thin, but then just being able to do that and eliminate you, and I had a lot more followers initially, and sometimes it's like, oh, you know how many they have, so just play one more than that and you're good. But it's like there's so much more to think about in future rounds, because we both also had an upgrade, Ankh power, where you can spend 2 followers at the end of one of those matchups to get a point. And a point is huge, especially in that point of the game. So I'm like, okay,
late game,
how much is he actually going to play? Because he is so close to winning. He's going to try to, at least for sure, that he has enough followers left over to get those points. And I also want to save him to get some points that way.
Right.
But I also want to make sure that I beat him. And then there's just one where we were just thinking back and forth all the different options
AP.
of what do I play here. I think you had 6, I had 8 or something like that. And I'm like, I have no clue. There's so many different ways that this could go. Like, do I just for sure? Because if I don't win it, if I play like 4 and you ended up going all 6, then I lost the game. And I'm like, oh, but what if he does a plague, does the same thing to me in the next round, and then I don't have many left over. So I did end up kind of getting a little win there. I played 4 of my 8 possible ones, and I think you played 3 or something, or 2 maybe.
I think so.
Forget, and I was just like,
2.
oh, because I was worried because I could have lost there with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the next turn, I played a card.
You
that
shocked me.
It could have, been the other way. If you would have played, I think you could have played a different card and won the game as well.
Yeah.
So I was taking a risk, thinking you were going to play the card that you did play.
Yeah.
And then played a different card that
Yeah.
won me in only the circumstance that you played the card that
I think
you
I
did
was
play.
preparing to get another plague for your final area, because I still was going to have a hard time, because I thought maybe you would plague me there, and it was just, there were just so many things. It was such an interesting, thinky, and it slows the game down, but I didn't care in that moment because it was so interesting.
Yeah, that was really good. That last round of combat there really showed what can happen in the game.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it'll always be that close.
It could just be, but that could have just been a great way that it happened to play out. And
right.
But yeah, I'm usually not a big fan of bidding, especially just like, oh, put your hand out, bid it, you lose it no matter what. And it could have been bad, but I feel like even if I didn't, it was nice to get those victories early on, even though I did end up losing that. So that definitely added to it, the kind of back and forth. But even if I didn't, I feel like it still would be enjoyable.
Yeah. So with all that, if you're still following along as to what was happening in this game, I think after one play, I would say if it feels similar to that, it's probably going to be 8.5 to possibly even up to a 9 for me. It was a lot of fun, and there's just simple actions. The simple actions, I don't know, for some reason making me think a little bit of Rurik Dawn of Kiev. I don't know why, but it's just simple actions, and you're just doing simple things. And you don't ever feel like when you do lose combats and lose your characters on the board, I never really felt like, I have no chance of recouping and putting people back out on the board. So
it's not like now they have 7 worth of power there, and I'm never going to be able to meet it back up to that. It's not a lot of points of power, so you can come back next turn and win that area. But yeah, That
But then too, I think it's part of me is thinking too what it would be at a higher player count.
yeah,
Because the thing people also
the elephant
brought
in
up,
the room.
the elephant in the room, the merge rule. If you're playing, I think with more than two, there's a merge rule where the lowest player is like technically like
Yeah,
eliminated.
at a certain point on that track.
Yeah, merge two gods. I don't remember how that all works. We didn't play with that, so we didn't actually look at those rules.
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever did play it with more, how that would feel. And I don't know if, I mean, this has been out for probably a couple years now, so maybe there's some rules online or something that have something so you can just ignore the merge altogether.
Yeah.
Because I think then this would be probably just as good.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me know in the comments below if you have played this one and if there are maybe some special rules on a non-merge version. Because I feel like a lot of people have been very turned off on that.
Yeah.
I do not like player elimination in games, and technically I think they're not eliminated, but they're
it's just
kind of
really weird. I
eliminated.
think there's like some thematic thing of these different gods or whatever religions kind of grouping together to survive, but it just is really weird. I'd have to experience it, but yeah, that does seem really weird. I don't know how that's going to be. Maybe we'll absolutely love it.
Yes. So know that about this, or we didn't have that. So if you're playing with more than two or playing on, this is just a two-player experience.
Yeah, yeah,
would be different.
yeah. I really the simple actions I think just allow you to get into this game so much more because I was very intimidated, but just seeing like, oh, there's just 4 actions. They're very simple, like move, put people out there. And it gives me that feeling of kind of like Cusco, kind of building these different areas, making them a little more or less powerful, and sneaking in and trying to maneuver your way to get those victory points. Like we said, that last round was just like some of the thinkiest moments that we've had in any game. But it was the best kind, and after that, I can't give this anything but a 10. For my first impression,
wow!
I
didn't think you liked it that much.
Just that moment when we were thinking for that plague, I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing.
When we spent half the game
Half
time
the game.
in that last round of combat.
It honestly probably was a huge percentage
It was a long
of the game. But yeah, it was just, I don't know. It was unlike any other game that I'd played, especially for bidding, because because I wasn't really excited for that part of the game.
Yeah.
And it just ended up being kind of one of the highlights of the game.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder too, it could have just been circumstantial, might have just ended up being that good that way. I just wonder if it'll always be like you have a close enough amount of those to bid with.
Yeah.
Because if you far outweighed someone else's, you're probably then able to just easily
win
get
that
rid
every
of.
time. Yeah.
But then that's kind of on the other player too for not setting themselves up.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just continue to ignore that and you're just at 2 followers and you're just allowing the other person to continuously beat you that way, it's a little bit on you.
Yeah.
You're a lot. I mean, because you could set yourself up to at least get some.
Yeah.
It might not. I guess it kind of depends. If you've gotten wiped out pretty bad with your smaller figures and stuff, because that's kind of how you gain the followers, is if you're next adjacent to monuments and stuff. I could see then maybe, you might get to a point where you're just not in the best position to do that, but but it is a solid game.
And every turn, man, just that is so tight, taking those actions, and you're almost always setting someone up to be able to move, get to the end of those tracks, because it does adjust, I think, perfectly for 2 players, and
and I don't know if you mentioned it, but you probably did, and I might have just missed it, that you can do 2 actions.
Yeah, you can do 2 actions.
As long as you don't... Your first one isn't triggering it to the end.
Yeah, and you have to go from top to bottom as well. So you can't muster your troops and then move them. You have to move first, and then that, and then that, and that. And you can set up your opponent so that like all 4 of them are like one spot before triggering that movement along the track. So then you guarantee that they only have 1 move or one
action that they can do.
And then you'll be set up to possibly be 2, or at least get one of those movement yourself.
Right.
It's just it's
got
the entire
a lot of good
game.
stuff. A lot of good stuff, but yeah. So I think we've got an unboxing of this one.
Yep.
I don't know how long ago that was.
Yeah, I
think
don't even remember.
It's probably been unboxed a while
I don't
ago.
know
So
who unboxed it. It might
I
have
do
been
not
both
remember.
of us. Might have been me. You could have been Michaela. For all we
It's
know.
been a while, but we will have that video going up alongside this, so you can check that out if you want a better look at the components and stuff. But yeah, otherwise, we hope to see you on that video, and as always, don't forget to
Keep on nibbling
on our content.